I'm glad you realize that I know and have always understood the very special relationship between Nehru and you, made the easier by my fondness and admiration for him, and by the remarkable lucky fact that among my many defects, God did not add jealousy in any shape or form. Once again, one of these very flattering letters from Dickie, full of self-deprecating bits here and there, but also delusion. God never known jealousy. What are you even talking about? That's not true. There's been plenty of times when he was jealous at the fact that Edwina was running all over the place. But the way that he solved that wasn't by harping at her in a jealous way. He would then go to her and, basically beat himself in front of her and be like, I'm the worst, I'm the worst, I'm the worst. Please love me anyway. I need you. But that doesn't mean he wasn't jealous. It means that he just didn't deal with it in a rough and angry way. He was jealous. He was just trying to figure out a way to get back into her heart and her good graces. Delusional, but both of them are. This whole book is a study on delusion. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cheer Denise. Today we're going to be reading from the Mountbattens. So typically this is our Sunday read, but over the summer I've gotten a little wonky about it. So I'm really, now that the school year is starting, really want to be more consistent with my scheduling so you guys know a little bit more what to expect. Of course, during the week we're going to keep going with Ask Not, but on Sundays I like to get out a book that's a little bit elevated, a little bit more of a reliable history, so we at least have something during the week that we're like, okay, I can trust that. Because Ask Not, as exciting as it is, and as honest as I think the flavor is, sometimes some of the details do leave me going, but really? So let's go ahead and get started on this. This chapter is called Separate Lives. You'll recall that Edwina and Dickie had been in India, but then they left India, their job there was over, and he was stationed in Malta again. And it's a little bit of a downgrade of a job for him, whereas he had been, the governor of a continent. Now he is kind of receiving orders, and there's all kinds of trouble at home, and of course he and Edwina aren't getting along again. She's going through menopause. She's a nightmare. She's all kinds of extra niceness left over for these lovers of hers, but she can't seem to rally herself for her husband or her kids. The other thing that happened in the last chapter was that Prince Philip married Princess Elizabeth, and then also the king died. So we didn't get a lot of discussion or detail about that, but the one thing that was interesting about that particular chapter was the fact that Dickie was overstepping his bounds with Philip, and Philip was kind of getting annoyed with it. Like, I can run my own life. I really don't need you to constantly be putting in your oar. Thank you so much for all that you've done, but I'm a big boy now, and I really would just wish that you would step off and let me be an adult. But Dickie just feels like he needs to continue to interject himself constantly and continually. So that's kind of was a theme in the last chapter. But this chapter is entitled Separate Lives. It begins like this. In the spring of 1952, Dickie's time as 4th Sea Lord ended, and he moved on to his next post, Commander-in-Chief of the Mediterranean Fleet, taking up residence in Admiralty House, a 5-bedroomed house with a ballroom and a narrow street in the middle of Valletta. In the entrance hall, the soaring staircase rose between great marble plaques that listed all the naval commanders in chief since Nelson, remembered Pamela Mountbatten. The garden overlooked the ramparts and could be reached only through a tunnel beneath the street and a climb up a steep staircase. When the fleet was berthed in Malta, my father worked in an office overlooking Grand Harbor. Edwina continued her tours for St. John Ambulance, Save the Children, and the Red Cross, and her involvement with Naval Wives Volunteer Service, the Allied Wives Club, the Service Families Nursery and Convalescence Home, Malta Memorial District Nursing Association, Sea Rangers, and Girl Guides. She set up a scheme for a volunteer car service for hospital patients and a housewives' mutual help service. She's very busy. Brian Smith was a young secretarial officer in the Commander-in-Chief's office, responsible, amongst other things, for the printing office. When he was duty secretary, one of his tasks was to take Mountbatten's correspondence from the naval headquarters to Admiralty House at about 9 in the evening, and wait on Mountbatten whilst he went through the papers that Ronnie Brockman had weeded out as requiring his personal attention, which usually took about an hour. Brian Smith wrote that Mountbatten hardly acknowledged that I was there. In all the time I was doing this, I only remember one piece of conversation complaining that his biro was not working. His usual place of work was his office in the naval headquarters overlooking Grand Harbor, and he would work there in the mornings doing the routine work of the day and exchanging calls. Then in the afternoons, he would usually play polo. He did not seem overly concerned with the day-to-day running of the fleet. He left that to the He left that to the Chief of Staff, Manly Power, his secretary, Ronnie Bachman, and the captain of the fleet. He delegated well, and he made sure he was supported by able people while he focused on the matters that interested him. At this time, he was very much concerned with the setting up of a NATO command, Allies Force Mediterranean, which would make him a senior NATO commander. Whenever he visited any ship or naval establishment, he always insisted on being well briefed. In particular, he wanted people to think that he remembered them, which was not the case. And he would get lists of people in the ship who had served with him so that he could surprise them by appearing to remember their names as a contrived chance meeting. Sometimes, when it went wrong, there were embarrassing mistakes. One of his hobbies was keeping up to date and publishing his family tree, and he was extremely upset to find that the printing office did not have the same typeface to match the original for amendments. Every day, his daily program was printed and circulated to both service and civil authorities in Malta. He wanted people to know what he was doing. So, kind of a big old fraud, you know what I mean? And that's the problem with Dickie. Just as soon as you decide that you sort of understand him and you sort of give him, a pass or whatever, then you read this sort of little thing about him pretending to remember people, always putting up a front all the day long, trying to make you think that he was one thing. And not necessarily being that thing, but just so long as you believed it, that's really what mattered. Just so long as you were tricked, just so long as you bought in on the lie. I mean, he was a politician. That's the thing. I mean, the way he functioned was as a politician, not as a human being. And there is a difference. But according to this person, Brian, Edwina was very different. He wrote that Mountbatten and Lady Louis seemed to lead separate lives, going about their various engagements on their own. They were not often seen with each other unless attending an official function where they had to be together. If she needed any printing done for the Naval Wives Organization, she would ask me to go to the Admiralty House to discuss it. And if it was about lunchtime, I would be asked to have lunch, which was very informal and enjoyable. She'd kick her shoes off under the table complaining of sore feet. She would always make you feel that you were important to her and would encourage you to talk. She was always very grateful for anything that was done for her. Again, with Edwina, it's like on one chapter, you're like, I can't stand this lady. And the next chapter, you get something like this, and you're like, oh, well, she does seem like she was pretty nice. She does seem like she wasn't someone who put on airs, which I really think is the difference between the two of them. Because, she had come from money and she'd come from status. She's the one who brought all the money into the marriage. If she had wanted to act uppity and act like she was better than other people might have given her a pass thinking, well, she's from a certain class. And she's also from a culture that supports that kind of hierarchy of class. But she seems like she was the sort of person that, would walk barefoot around your yard, just like a normal person. And Dickie seems like the sort of person that because he did not come from the same stratus that she had come from and the same financial stratus she had come from, that he felt always the need to put on airs, let you know who his connections were, always be pulling strings to let these people, I really do have the ear of the king, which he did. But he needed you to know that. It wasn't enough that he had it. He needed you to know it. Whereas Edwina is like, oh, whatever, In September, the Mountbattens cruised for a month on HMS Surprise, the Commander-in-Chief's dispatch vessel for official visits, bringing with them Yola Letelier. Remember, Yola. Yola has been with Mountbatten these many years, and she continues to crop up. Another individual was Malcolm Sargent, who joined the ship in Naples. That's Edwina's boyfriend. Remember, he's the conductor. What is up with this? Let's go take a cruise. I'll bring my girlfriend. We'll stop and pick up your boyfriend. We've all got to have our people. I don't know, you guys. This is just getting weird. It's been weird for a long time, but it's like, I don't know what it is. You'd think I'd be more interested. I mean, every book that I read is just full of people doing crazy things, and I seem to love it. But for some reason in this book, I just can't. I'm just done with it. It's stupid. And I don't know if it's because I'm getting all of these facts almost as like a laundry list of things that happened. Then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And there's not much color to the list of things that happens. And maybe that's why I just find it so redundant. But anyway, Lola's back. Malcolm Sargent's joining him in Naples. Over the next 2 weeks, he and Edwina, according to his private diary, spent hours of bliss lolling in the sunshine. These are adults. On the Commander-in-Chief's private deck, playing with the dolphins in the water off Capri, climbing Mount Vesuvius, and toured the brothel districts of Algiers. Sounds about right. Dickie was himself enjoying his own affairs. According to Mountbatten's private secretary, John Barrett, he met another of his favorite women friends when he was in commander of the Mediterranean fleet in the 1950s. She was very pretty, but she was not popular with the staff at Broadlands, to whom she was offhand and patronizing. I heard her described as a, quote, snooty little bitch, and worse. Lord Mountbatten kept an occasional relationship with her through the 60s, but by the 70s it had faded out. I wonder who that was. One particular issue as part of his new job was the division of responsibilities between Dickey, based in Malta, and his American counterpart, Admiral Carney, Commander-in-Chief Mediterranean in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, based in Naples, which was also resolved that winter when the jobs were combined and given to Mountbatten. An integrated naval air headquarters staffed by admirals from Italy, France, Greece, the United States, and Turkey was set up, which had so many flags in front that it was nicknamed Selfridges after the London department store, as he had at SEAC, and would do again in the future. Mountbatten soon succeeded in persuading different services and countries to become a reasonably coherent international force. In February 1953, Mountbatten was promoted to admiral. His nephew, who had recently been appointed admiral of the fleet on the retirement from his naval career, telegraphed his congratulations. "Keep it up. You may catch up one day." The 50s was spent with Edwina caught between her husband and the man she had given her heart to. Each spring, she would go to India, where she would stay at the Prime Minister's house, and most years Nehru would come to Britain. At first, they had written to each other every day, but within a year it was weekly, and by 1954, it was fortnightly. One of the things I don't get about the Edwina-Nehru relationship is the fact that they keep acting so noble, like, oh, I know, of course, I would love to be with you, but I'm married, and I just don't think that that would be the thing. You know, I do have some responsibilities that I have to attend to. It wouldn't be the thing. It wouldn't look right. But I'm like, but you're going over and spending every spring with this guy, and he's coming over to Britain, and you're writing each other constantly, and like you've very evidently given your heart to him. Like, who is this facade for? Anyway, despite the fact that Edwina and Nehru were communicating less often with each other, the bond remained strong. It was a bond that Dickey accepted, not least because it kept relations harmonious, but which unsettled Edwina. Throughout the early and mid-50s, she often discussed divorce. "I've never attempted to stop you or hold you, and I never shall," he told her. "I don't want you to stay against your will. I'm not that selfish." But she stayed. She stayed because of the children and grandchildren, because she liked the life that Dickey gave her, because he loved her and needed her, and because, in her confused state of mind, she also continued to love him. Shortly after George VI's death, Edwina, hospitalized with a hemorrhage and worried she might die, passed Nehru's letters to her husband for safekeeping. Dickey, nervous of what they might contain, asked Pamela if she would look at them first. Edwina's confessional letter read, "You will realize that they are a mixture of typical Jawaharlal letters full of interests and facts and really historic documents. Some of them have no personal remarks at all. Others are love letters in a sense, though you yourself will realize the strange relationship, most of it spiritual, which exists between us. Jay has obviously meant a great deal in my life in these last years, and I think I in his too. Our meetings have been rare and always fleeting, but I think I understand him and perhaps he me, as well as any human beings can ever understand each other. It is rather wonderful that my affection and respect and gratitude and love for you are really so great that I feel I would rather you had these letters than anyone else, and I feel you would understand and not in any way be hurt. Rather the contrary. We understand each other so well, although so often we seem to differ and be miles apart. You've been very sweet and good to me, and we've had a great partnership. My admiration and my devotion to you are very great. I think you know that. I have had a very full and a very happy life on the whole, all thanks to you. Bless you, and with my lasting love." Okay, can I just say this real quick? So this is our little confessional letter. What I really am super annoyed about with both of these people is that when they communicate with each other, most effectively, it is in letters to each other. Okay, fine. You guys can write your letters to each other, whatever. But they constantly are trying to influence the other person's response back to them by putting words in the other person's mouth or feelings in the other person's mouth or letting them know, well, I know you won't be upset about this because, you and I understand each other so much, or, this is really a compliment to you that I would be giving these things to you. Surely you can understand that our love together was so strong that this kind of stuff wouldn't bother you at all. It's this constant need to manipulate the other person's response back or to not allow them to have the natural response. And both of them do this. Both of them write back and forth to each other, letting the other person know kind of what they expect back in a response. It's very annoying. It's very annoying to me that they both do this. Well, Dickey waited a year to answer, which is interesting that he would answer this letter, which was clearly a deathbed letter, though she did not die. So it seems like he would not feel compelled to answer this, but he did. He said, "I'm glad you realize that I know and have always understood the very special relationship between Nehru and you, made the easier by my fondness and admiration for him, and by the remarkable lucky fact that among my many defects, God did not add jealousy in any shape or form. I honestly don't believe I've ever known what jealousy means, universal as it seems to be. And if it concerns the happiness of anyone else I'm fond of, as I'm fond of you, then only my desire for your happiness exists. That is why I've always made your visits to each other easy and been faintly hurt when at times, such as in 1951, you didn't take me into your confidence right away. Considering how deeply fond we are of each other and how proud and admiring I certainly am of all of your wonderful achievements, I cannot but be sad and worried that we should have had so many differences. I know I'm selfish and difficult, but that doesn't change my deep and profound love for you. You have been my mainstay, my inspiration, and my true companion for far more than half my life. Once again, one of these very flattering letters from Dickie, full of self-deprecating bits here and there, but also delusion. God has, fortunately not given me jealousy in any shape or form. I've never known jealousy. What are you even talking about? That's not true. There's been plenty of times when he was jealous at the fact that Edwina was running all over the place. But the way that he solved that wasn't by harping at her in a jealous way. He would then go to her and, basically beat himself in front of her and be like, I'm the worst, I'm the worst, I'm the worst. Please love me anyway. I need you. But that doesn't mean he wasn't jealous. It means that he just didn't deal with it in a rough and angry way. He was jealous. He was just trying to figure out a way to get back into her heart and her good graces. Delusional, but both of them are. This whole book is a study on delusion. What was the nature of the relationship with Nehru? Edwina's authorized biography, Janet Morgan, has claimed, having talked to those who knew them well, that it was purer than a physical relationship, that Nehru respected Dickie and would not have abused that trust. Would not have abused that trust. Do we have different definitions of abusing the trust? Because if my husband was carrying on with somebody like this and told me it was a spiritual connection, I would tell you that my trust had been abused. Anyway, to all of her lovers, she had given only the shell of herself. In exposing her doubts and hopes, she had exhausted herself to Nehru in a way that was more profound than a mere physical embrace. Nothing must be allowed to degrade the precious relationship. Okay. This is according to her authorized biographer, but nothing should be allowed to degrade the precious relationship. Oh, how about the truth? Can we allow the truth to degrade the precious relationship? Because this was a married woman who was carrying on with another man. We don't need to romanticize that. Pure and simple, it was wrong. Pure and simple. If she didn't want to be with Dickie, get a divorce. Dickie had told her time and time again, go. And she's over there being like, I just want to divorce you already. And he's like, okay, then do it. Well, no, but I want to. It's just like, who could have existed like that? If I'd been Dickie, I'd been like, I will drop the papers. But of course he couldn't, because he enjoys being the whipping boy too much. The authorized biographer argues that the correspondence was rhapsodic but chaste, alluding only in general terms to the physical passion they denied themselves. The physical passion they denied themselves? Was that also part of this weird and strange world of fetish that these two had come up with each other? Like, I want you so bad, but I won't. But I want you, but I won't do it. But I do want you. Do you know that? Do you get it? I want you, but I won't. I won't, because I'm married. You can't touch me. I'm married. But if only. It's just like, you two need to go find something to do. And that's the thing that's crazy, is she had things to do. It's not as though she was just like bored out of her head. She hadn't volunteered. She's just like a lady of leisure, lunching and brunching from, dawn till dark. She had things to do. It astounds me that at the end of the day, she still had this much time for like middle school theatrics. But anyway, according to Andrew Wilson, quote, the highly charged, brittle, and almost manic relationship which both Mountbattens had with Nehru seems, in the eyes of hindsight, to be much more explicable in terms of non-consummated sexual emotional passion. Lady Pamela Hicks, interviewed for the publication of her memoir India Remembered, said it was platonic. Philip Ziegler passes over it quickly. If there was any physical element, it can only have been of minor importance to either party. Mountbatten's grandson Ashley Hicks claims Nehru's sister revealed that he was impotent, and therefore there could not have been a physical relationship with Edwina. Interesting. Yet Edwina, writing to her husband, refers to an element of the physical alongside the spiritual relationship. Others are love letters in a sense, though you yourself will realize the strange relationship, most of it spiritual, which exists between us. Richard Huff, the author of several books on the Mountbattens, and who interviewed Edwina's sister, later wrote, Mountbatten himself knew that they were lovers. He was proud of the fact, unlike Edwina's sister, who deplored the relationship and hated Nehru for the rest of his life as a result. Marie Seton, a friend and biographer of Edwina, agreed, I really don't know about the physical side of their affair, but I think probably yes. Nehru was deeply attractive to women and had many lovers. They go on to list the names of the lovers, and my apologies that I will probably mispronounce many of these names, but the book says that he had an affair with the politician Padmaja Naidu, who threatened to commit suicide over the affair, and whom he later appointed governor of West Bengal, the actress Devika Rani, and Mridula Sarabhai, the General Secretary of the Congress Working Committee. In May 1949, he supposedly fathered a son with a scholar of Indian scripture and mythology, in her early 30s, called Shaharda Mata. The boy was brought up in a Christian missionary boarding school. The writer Zarir Masani's parents, quote, knew Nehru well, and they and many others who did thought he was highly sexed, as was the whole Nehru family. I do know that they wrote each other passionate love letters till she died, and that he used to spend the night with her on trips to London as PM in the 50s, much to the chagrin of his foreign service minders, one of whom was my uncle and a future foreign secretary. It seems unlikely they didn't go to bed. There are countless references suggesting that there was some sort of physical relationship. Rusi Modi, the son of the governor of the United Provinces, later chairman of Tata Steel, on one of Edwina's early visits to India, was asked to fetch Nehru and Edwina and bring them to dinner. Opening the door, he found the two embracing. According to S.S. Pirzada, a former foreign minister of Pakistan, Jinnah was given several letters between Nehru and Edwina that had been intercepted. One said, quote, Dicky will be out tonight, come after 10 o'clock. Another, I have fond memories of Simla, riding in your touch. Jinnah returned the letter saying he had no wish to capitalize on them. Nehru's biographer Stanley Wolpert writes of seeing Nehru and Edwina at the opening of New Delhi's Academy of Fine Arts. He said, and how like adolescent lovers he and Edwina behaved, touching, whispering in each other's ears, laughing, holding hands. The family line is that they are simply good friends. Lady Mountbatten's grandson, Lord Romsey, told me 35 years later over tea in his sitting room in Broadlands. Nothing more than that, you see. But I had seen much more, and Lord Mountbatten himself often referred to Nehru's correspondence with his wife as love letters, knowing better than anyone but Nehru how much Edwina adored her handsome Jawaha, as she lovingly called him. That was why Nehru's daughter Indira hated her. The author, Charlotte Breese, feels all the evidence points to a physical relationship. She wrote, Henry Burdwan remembered that when in Calcutta in the 1950s, Hutch used to hear that Edwina's relationship with Nehru was complicated by his then reputed impotence. At this news, Henry's father, the Maharaja of Burdwan, who was very well informed and had known Edwina and Hutch in London for years, used to roar with laughter. Many people in India believed in Nehru's affair with Edwina, and those still surviving, time of writing 1998, provide the evidence of their own eyes. Furthermore, every year from 1950 until her death in 1960, she went to see Nehru in Delhi whenever she could, and he sometimes visited her in England. While I accept that the impotence gossip is unproven, I find it strange of Morgan to insist that Edwina and Nehru conducted an exclusively affectionate and spiritual relationship. All else aside, given Edwina's character and physical needs, it is far more likely, then, that she had a fully consummated affair with Nehru. There were many stories in Delhi and Kashmir of servants finding them in bed together. So, I mean, either the servants really did find them in bed, or the servants knew that it would be a believable story and so said so. The official line has always been that the love affair did not begin until May 1948, and after the transfer of power, but the rumors of their closeness had circulated from soon after the Mountbattens arrived in India. On May 31st, 1947, Hamid was writing in his diary, Nehru's relationship with Lady Mountbatten is sufficiently close to have raised many eyebrows. Another politician close to Jinnah claimed that by the summer of 1947, Nehru was, quote, having a roaring love affair with Lady Mountbatten, said to be with the tacit approval of Mountbatten. Edwina remained as busy with her own humanitarian work as ever, driven by duty and competitiveness with her husband, but she also continued to support her husband in his career. She acted as charming hostess for politicians and naval colleagues at Wilton Crescent and Broadlands. She used her own contacts to put in a good word on behalf of her husband, and she patiently put up with ceremonial events. He missed her when she was away. The house is very lonely without you, he wrote in 1959. I shall hate passing your door in a few moments when I go to bed without looking in. Symbolically that year, her present to him was a wrought iron gate for Broadlands, her monogram on one side, his on the other. That's the end of that chapter. That's better than I imagined that it would be. Of course, Separate Lives did indicate that it was going to be a pretty interesting chapter, but I wasn't expecting the bit about realities of whether they had a physical relationship or not, because that's been my question this whole time. I had not known, and it would appear that nobody really could put a specific date and time to when they were intimate. But I mean, it is ridiculous to assume that somebody who had as many affairs as she did would find somebody who is this great soulmate of hers who would not consummate that relationship. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And it's not as though he had some moral code against having affairs himself. He, as the book describes, was a womanizer himself. So these two people who have always expressed themselves sexually would suddenly come upon each other, this great meeting of the mind and soul, and then not also want to be together. That doesn't even make sense. So not here for that lie. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that little episode, and I will see you again this week as we continue reading Ask Not, and then next Sunday again when we have more of the Mountbattens. Thank you guys so much. As always, I'll see you in the comments. Bye.